Welcome back to World Beater Wrestling. This is my next edition of the Q&A, just answering a few questions that may have been asked over on the worldbeaterwrestling.com Patreon or here on YouTube or any other platform. These typically are questions that aren't very long and detailed and require a standalone episode, but if you do want to check out my standalone episodes and you're not already there or watching this over there, make sure you head to worldbeaterwrestling.com. That is the new exclusive home to my video tutorials, technique breakdowns, and a lot more. Anyway, let's get to the good stuff. I made some notes just to help me with the answers here. But the first question is how to avoid injury. Look, I'm no doctor in sports science or physiotherapy or anything like that. I got a pretty average grade in human anatomy at university, and that's about it. But what I'm about to say is very much anecdotal from what I've seen in 22 years of wrestling and 15 or whatever years of being a trainer. So the first thing I would say is your fundamentals are extremely important. And I know I hammer on about this a lot, but I've seen a correlation between those who have pretty rusty fundamentals and those who get injured often. I feel like your ability to attack the mat, to stay safe, to commit yourself to different movements and not take shortcuts, not reach for the mat all the time, tends to be a really, really direct link with those who just don't get hurt that often, at least not when it comes to those real catastrophic injuries like really bad shoulder joint injuries, knee injuries, ankles, neck injuries, and so on. Obviously, there's going to be wear and tear no matter what, doesn't matter who you are, but that's just one thing I've found. Your frame, so making sure that you have strength in the right places, you don't have muscular imbalances, that you are training at the gym, that you're doing your own strength training. It's always going to help as well. Again, I've just seen those correlations between those who don't train, have very minimal strength, don't have a strong build, and those who get injured often. And if you are training, don't make the mistake I did of ego lifting with poor form, poor range of motion, and terrible mobility as a result. That's what I did for a lot of my early 20s, and I have shoulder issues for the past 10 or so years that don't completely go away. I can manage them, but they're still always a presence. So make sure that when you are lifting, full range of motion, using weight that you are capable of personally and through work with my physiotherapist, who I absolutely rate highly. The best growth that I've found in terms of not getting injured and feeling my best has been from using lighter weights, lighter loads, and full range of motion. Very important. I guess if you're getting injured often, you also want to analyze your lifestyle and how's your diet looking? Are you carrying extra weight that you could perhaps get rid of? Is that putting extra stress on your joints? How's your sleep and recovery? Are you overtraining, under recovering? I know that personally I find when I am not sleeping well, when I'm stressed and not maybe living the healthiest lifestyle, that I do tend to get a lot more injury. That's just something I've found anecdotally through noting down when I got injured and what my surrounding lifestyle was like at the time. The second question is, what are the chances of making it to the WWE? And I can probably attest to the fact that very, very slim would be the best answer, the most responsible answer I could give you. Let's do the math. Let's do the stats. How many people are on the WWE roster? If you include NXT talent, we're looking at what, 100, 150 maybe, if that. Let's look at how many wrestlers there are. In fact, I did a little bit of research and I believe there was 17,500 on Cage Match. And obviously that includes people who have retired, but there are a lot of people who are not on cagematch.com. I think that's the website. So you're probably looking at tens and tens of thousands of people who have never had a sniff at the big time. It just is what it is. Doesn't mean you can't get there. Doesn't mean that you should limit your dreams, limit your goals. Absolutely not. Again, I can test that I've got so many friends who came up with me, started in the same places, trained in the same places, worked the jobs on the side, lived the average life, and ended up making it to the WWE and to other major promotions around the world. So look, small chances, but if that's what you want to do, absolutely go for it. There's absolutely no harm in trying. It's better to try and fail than to live a life of regret, as far as I'm concerned. The next one is, I won't be able to train for a while. How can I continue to improve? And I'm very much a glass half full type of person. I always try to find the positive in every situation. And in those times when I could not train. Perhaps it was through injury, through being busy with life, through being away for a period of time, on a holiday, whatever it is. I actually found I made a lot of growth in other areas. Perhaps it's as simple as you are resting and recovering your body. You are maybe renewing your passion by taking a step back for a week or 2 weeks or a month or two. But at the same time, it doesn't mean you can't actively take steps to improve. Obviously, you're watching this channel and this is all about education outside of being at a training session. It's online education and that's a great way to learn. Tape study is a very simple thing to do, to study and analyze matches as we do on worldbeaterwrestling.com every fortnight. Watching videos like the tutorials I put out there to learn new technique or to listen to a perspective on the industry. Maybe it's dedicating more time to the gym now that you perhaps can't wrestle on weekends and come to training as often. Look, there's so much that goes into making a well-rounded pro wrestler, so if you can't do one of those things, just focus on the others. Should you try to stick to one specific style? I don't think so. I don't think it makes too much of a difference. There's obviously pros and cons to any approach you take. The perks and benefits to having one style is that it is much easier to understand who you are. If you're just doing high flying and acrobatics and that's all you do, then straight away the crowd are going to know exactly what to expect. It also gives you a very clear strength as well as potentially some weaknesses or deficiencies you might have. Your opponent cuts out your legs, starts working some knee bars and things like that, and now you can't fly. And it creates a really cool story to get behind. At the same time, can you have multiple styles? I think a lot of wrestlers, most wrestlers this day and age have proven that absolutely can be done as well. I guess it just comes down to what you would like to establish, and if you do want to be known in a certain way, then that's what you have to put forth predominantly. In the same vein, next question, should you keep all moves working the same body part? It's something that I do promote mostly because it does simplify the process, and in the same reason as the last question, it establishes your moveset, which I think is very important. If you can establish what you do, it gives the crowd something to anticipate and get behind. However, everything in wrestling, 90% rule. Let's look at someone like a Zack Sabre Jr. Very technical heavy, very jiu-jitsu oriented, works every single body part he can, usually within the same match, hits submissions from all angles, but that's what makes him unique. And for someone like him, that's who he is. For other people who maybe you want to get over your single submission, if you're working the neck, but then you're trying to hit figure four leg locks as your finishing move, there's going to be a disconnect. It's not telling a coherent story. So again, pick and choose your moments. Understand who you are first before you start answering that question for yourself. What can we do if we're struggling to figure out story and character? I have answered this in a few of my videos on the YouTube channel and on the World Beater Wrestling Patreon. I think forcing it is always the wrong move. I think a lot of people, especially in the early stages, put a little too much focus on story and character when really they should be focusing on becoming more confident in the ring and making sure that they can improve their technique, they can work with a crowd, they can react and pivot at the right moments. These are the most important things, and often people will start to figure out slowly what their character is, and your character will evolve over time. You'll have an early idea of who you are, and maybe for that you just use some real life inspiration. I found that people who are being themselves tend to come across as the most genuine and authentic, and they're the people that the crowd get behind. So, maybe use some parts of your personality, some parts of your lifestyle. What's something you enjoy in the real world? What's something you're good at? Where are you from? Which location? What walk of life? These are things that you can start to add. It doesn't have to be as boisterous and ridiculous as having, a job description like it's 1995 WWF. Right? You don't have to come out as a plumber or a fireman or something crazy like that. Your character can be very subtle. It can be just slight extensions of your personality. I believe it was Mick Foley, potentially in Have a Nice Day, his first book, where he said that some of the best characters are their personality turned up to 10. And I don't think that always has to be the case. Sometimes you are told to play a certain character to come up with something different. both are very valid ways to go about it, but it's a very easy way to go. Personally, I found early on I tried too hard to come up with a very definable character, and it wasn't me. And I was not good at playing the role. It didn't seem believable, and the crowd didn't really get behind it as a result. As soon as I took a step back and started to just be myself and started to incorporate just bits of my real personality or just little things I thought I was good at along the way, I slowly started to mold and become who I am today. So I guess long story short is try everything, play around with different characters, use your training time wisely to test different things. I know we've used drills here where we actually give our wrestlers a character for a training drill and they have to embody something completely ridiculous just to put them in a different mindset, just to get them out of that box, get them out of that very single-minded thinking. But then don't stress too much if you're not finding anything and nothing is quite working. Everything is a constant process of refining and figuring out what works. And sometimes it's just a whole collection of very little changes and very little evolutions that creates the end result. What do I think about kicking out of finishes multiple times? Right time, right place, and that right time and right place isn't going to be very often. If you want to put stock in your finishes, then they have to be finishes. If they are being kicked out of left, right, and center, then they're not really much of a finisher anymore. So we've seen in history, WWE used a lot of finisher kickouts for a while, and it started getting almost too much. And then there was a period of time where they kind of just backed it right up, and there was just a lot of single finishes again. And yeah, that's something you got to be mindful of. If you're doing it a lot, it's not going to have any impact if you really need it for a long-term payoff or anything like that. So yeah, just be careful with that one. And last question, do you have any advice for someone who joined wrestling in their 40s but is having a tough time with fitness and the weight not coming off? That might be a correlation in why the fitness is a struggle, is potentially because of maybe excess weight. It all comes down to calories in versus calories out. I'm not going to be the personal trainer right now or the nutritionist. You can find so much online about that, but it tends to come down to diet. I wouldn't put too much stock in the exercise factor. Obviously, that's going to help if you're not doing a whole lot outside of wrestling. Maybe things like tracking your step count, like getting daily walks in. That's probably going to help you a little, but your diet is going to be the main thing. And making sure you're tracking your calories, seeing how much you eat, seeing how many incidentals that you are consuming that you're not really aware of, and then playing with that and reducing it slowly. Now, if we're just going to isolate the fitness side, there are so many ways to improve your fitness in the ring. Obviously, getting in the ring and training regularly and consistently and hard is going to be a great way to do so, because not a lot does replicate what we do. Yes, you can do your own conditioning outside of the ring, and if you have the time and it's something you enjoy doing, then yeah, absolutely go for it. I'm not going to give you what you should do because that's up to you. Personally, I love using the assault bike. It's my favorite piece of machinery. I love doing circuits on the assault bike. I like doing low intensity, steady state on the assault bike. So I do that from time to time, particularly if I'm trying to build up to a match. Have I found that it's made a massive difference? Not necessarily. If anything, I think maybe more the mental side of pushing through that feeling of being completely gassed and wiped out. That's probably been the best benefit, I think. But I can definitely say that when I've been wrestling hard and regularly, that's been the biggest growth for myself when it comes to the cardio aspect. And you know, poor fitness can also come down to things like inefficient breathing, like poor pacing in the ring, like the adrenaline dump. There's just so many aspects, very hard for me to knuckle down. But again, it's something I have mentioned in many of my previous episodes. So there you go, a bunch of questions answered. And of course, if you're a member of worldbeaterwrestling.com, you do have the benefit of asking questions anytime, which I do answer promptly, but sometimes I do like throwing them up on the Q&A just so I can give a little bit of a more detailed answer. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.